Hi, my name is Jessica. You're watching Shattered Truth. Today I'm going to tell you about my mom and how she betrayed me. I'd really appreciate it if you could support me with a like and a subscription. Thank you. So let's begin. I see their faces first, pressed together by the glow of a screen that shouldn't be mine to hold. My mother's smile is careful, the one she uses when she is trying not to look too hopeful. His jaw is tilted the way I remember it right before he lies. I don't scroll. I don't blink. I let the living room pulse around me while the photo fixes everything into a single hard point. They are together. My mother and the man who taught me how to doubt my own heartbeat. A notification trembles across the top edge of the screen with a flood of hearts from names I grew up seeing on casseroles and birthday cards. I close the app without thinking, but the image holds, stamped behind my eyes. I count the soft hums of the refrigerator and the distance to the front door and the number of steps to her house if I walk fast. I taste the metallic push of adrenaline on my tongue and decide I am already moving.
I live in Brookfall, Oregon, which means the city opens and tightens with the rhythm of small routines. I grew up in a bungalow with a porch that collects shoes and secrets. My mother kept lists on sticky notes and taught second grade. I studied design and freelanced from a laptop that knows my breath. He showed up in my life as a certainty I wanted to believe in, and then the certainty dissolved into smaller pieces that cut. The break happened as cleanly as it could on paper and as messily as anything human in the hours afterward. I don't revisit the details because they're not the story now. The story is what I am seeing, what I am walking toward, and what the next hour will shape whether I like it or not.
My mother's porch light is a square on the sidewalk when I turn onto her street. The house sits as if it never learned to expect surprises. Her car is in the driveway. His truck is at the curb like a careless signature. I step into my childhood hallway and catch the tight order she keeps. A basket for keys, a folded throw blanket, the steady breath of laundry. Then I see the newness perched on her entry table. It is a leather folio I know he likes to carry. Papers press at the edges like they want to confess. I lift the flap and skim enough to thread a shape together. A limited liability company with a name that feels designed to be forgettable. An operating agreement. A line that lists a manager. My mother's name. I feel the page thicken under my fingertip where her signature sits. Careful loops. The handwriting I learned to imitate in the margins of homework. The air in the hall pushes smaller, and I set the folio down as I hear footsteps. I adjust my face into something that won't crack and hold my body still.
He moves through her kitchen like he owns the angles. He reaches for glasses from the cupboard he used to tease for being too high. My mother passes him a bowl, as if this is normal. I don't speak. I narrate the details to myself to keep from floating. A blue dish towel on the oven handle. A tiny smear of marinara near the stove. The way her shoulders are slightly lifted in a posture that looks like hope pretending to be ease. A box sits open on the counter with a bracelet nestled in velvet. A silver curve with a small gemstone he would call tasteful. My mother glances at the box and then pretends she didn't. He taps his phone and flashes a screen with point-of-sale numbers, charts and lines I can read better than he can. He points and smiles his investor smile. She nods and refuses to let her hands tremble, and I feel the first click of a trap. Not because I think she's foolish, but because I know exactly how he arranges belief. He doesn't sell the dream. He sells the relief of not wanting to feel foolish for wanting the dream. I sit at the edge of the dining room and inventory the changes. A glossy folder from a private lender peeks out from beneath a cookbook. My mother has placed a spiral notebook beside it with neat columns of expenses and notes about interest, bullet points to organize feelings into numbers. A line item mentions home equity. Another lists projected revenue for an online storefront with handcrafted educational kits, something she has always wanted to do between grading and sleep. The storefront looks slick on a mock-up. He must have shown her how fast the checkout button can turn into certainty. The bracelet box folds closed with a soft click, and he pockets his phone with a motion I know is a tell. He never keeps the screen out when he believes the hook is set. The room warms with the friction of optimism against risk. The plan is marching forward in her house. My body understands that I am already behind. I anchor myself with small actions. I step into the bathroom and wash my hands I don't need to wash. I count to 10 and open the medicine cabinet to see if anything new has found a shelf. I see vitamin bottles with labels for focus and energy, and a travel-size mouthwash I remember him carrying. I return to the hallway and open the hall closet as if I'm looking for a jacket. His jacket is there. I slide my hand into the pocket. I feel folded paper and a coin. The paper is a receipt from a jeweler with an appraisal for a ring. The name at the bottom is not my mother's. It is an alias he uses for purchases he likes to reveal later as surprises. I fold the receipt back and put it where I found it, because right now I want information more than I want confrontation. I turn to the folio again. The lender packet shows terms that strip away comfort in exchange for speed. There is a clause about default that would vacuum my mother's house through a straw. I hold the paper long enough for the ink to imprint on my palm, and then I slide it back beneath the others before the kitchen quiets and I hear chairs move. They leave for a tasting at a small restaurant downtown, and I follow in the blunt way a person follows when the ground is moving. I keep a car length that feels both obvious and necessary. In the restaurant's window, I see them sit at a corner table. My mother straightens the menu as if it's a paper shield. He gestures toward a server and explains something with his hands, palms up, the salesman's supplicant. Plates arrive. A small cake appears on a tray with a flourish. He draws the attention around them like a net and then produces a box I don't want to recognize. The room changes shape while he opens it. He slides a ring onto her finger with a practiced tilt. Her face lifts through shock into the kind of acceptance people call brave. I lean against the window frame to keep the corner of the world steady and feel the stakes harden into more than romance. An engagement would fuse their finances and justify every contract. An engagement would turn a bad decision into a family story to defend. I am not afraid of his charm. I am afraid of the gravity it creates. I return to my apartment and try to inventory allies. My phone hums with messages from friends who have already seen the photo and are packaging their concern into soft questions. I leave them unread. I pull my laptop close and assemble a quiet war. I search business registries, I find the LLC, I note the registered agent, a strip mall suite with a name that implies law without committing to it. I scan county records and see a filed UCC statement that claims interest in equipment for any commerce operation. The collateral description is vague in a way that can be stretched to include everything in a home office. The creditor address matches the private lender's letterhead. A click leads me to a lender network with reviews that read like cautions whispered in bathrooms. I bookmark each page and start a list with verbs that keep me moving. Verify, call, cross-check, print, file. I imagine trying to describe this to my mother without losing her trust, and realize trust is already frayed. My chest tightens and then loosens because I decide to treat this like work. When love feels like quicksand, I step onto spreadsheets.
I build a profile that maps his previous ventures to a single shape. He offers speed to people who are tired of waiting for their own momentum. He wraps it in attention. He protects it with jargon. He leans on the way people hate admitting they felt flattered enough to believe him. I collect names of women who left reviews in a tone that apologizes to themselves for not seeing sooner. I see recurring addresses. I see the same lender names and the same notary. I look up the notary and find her schedule posted online for clients. I spot a gap that coincides with the time on my mother's signature. I scribble the pattern into a margin. Romance ties to business. Business ties to home equity. Home equity ties to default risk. Default risk ties to extraction. Extraction ties to vanishing. I don't need to prove his heart. I only need to prove the machinery. I call the county clerk and ask about public access terminals. A voice explains the hours. I close the call and put on the jacket I didn't need earlier. Every motion now matters.
The clerk's office sits behind a glass door that sticks. I sit at a scuffed terminal and pull up records until my eyes sting. I find a recording of a memorandum that links the lender to my mother's property address. The memo sits as a placeholder for a lien if certain terms trigger. It is a snake coiled beneath the porch. I print it. I find a DBA filing for a storefront name that matches the pretty mock-up on her counter. The owner is my mother. The authorized representative is him. The mail-to address is a co-working space where he likes to rent conference rooms by the hour. I print that. I check civil case dockets out of habit and see a name that makes my throat close. A woman in Salem filed a complaint last year that vanished after a stipulated dismissal. I read enough to understand it ended in a settlement with no finding, and enough to understand the cost of fear. I press my palm against the cool edge of the desk until my pulse steadies. I label the stack of papers with a word that feels like a command: leverage.
I outline 4 steps because 4 feels containable. Step 1, prevent any further entanglement that can be executed overnight. That means placing a freeze on the home equity application. I gather the lender's customer service number and the case ID from the packet. Step 2, notify the bank fraud department with a cautionary flag on unusual transfers tied to the new LLC. Step 3, document the engagement event and anchor it to the timeline of filings, not as gossip, but as evidence of inducement. Step 4, position my mother to exit without the shame that keeps people in traps. That means building her a door that looks like dignity. I call the lender and ask about a cooling off period. The rep reads from a script and mentions state regulations about rescission on certain products. I write the lindo down and feel a clock start. I open my mother's email on her old tablet that she once left signed in at my place and find the confirmation message sitting like a beacon. I forward it to a folder I name with today's date. I move to my own bank app and draft in language for a fraud alert without sending it yet. I collect screenshots and print them. I am building a bridge, one nail at a time.
He announces an engagement party on social media as if he expects applause to drown nuance. A venue tag appears. A time. A request for RSVP by QR code. I feel the harsh simplicity of a stage and understand I am being offered one. I don't need to speak on it. I need to move through it. I gather the folder and drive to the venue in advance. I speak to no one. I walk the halls and memorize exits. I find the manager's office door and stand outside until the manager emerges with a clipboard and a decisive walk. I don't ask for permission. I hold up a single printed page that matters most, the memorandum tied to my mother's house. I place it under a paperweight on the counter as if I were leaving a message for myself. I step back and wait until the manager looks at it, reads the words, and silently understands that an invoice that goes unpaid will find a lien fighting it for attention. The manager nods once in a way that says the bar tab will not be open-ended. That is not my goal, but it is a boundary I welcome. I leave before anyone asks me to. When the party begins,
I stand near the rear wall and tell my body to be a camera. My mother is luminous in a dress she chose for confidence rather than flash. He disposes himself near the center and harvests compliments. A projector cycles through photos prepared for the engagement announcement. None of them include me. I study the slideshow like evidence. I watch his hand rest on my mother's waist with the practiced reassurance of a mentor guiding a pupil. I time his glances at the venue manager, at the bar, at the doorway. He scans for threats the way someone does who remembers debts by face. He spots me and arranges his features into warmth. I do not give him an expression to hold. I move along the wall to where the event planner keeps the vendor packets. I slip a single document into the stack. The business registry page that lists my mother as the sole owner and him as an authorized representative who can be removed by written notice. I add the form for that notice with a sticky tab that marks the signature line. I leave the pen in a place she will see when she steps aside to catch her breath. I am not sabotaging a celebration. I am placing a life raft in the path of a current. The dessert cart rolls out and I shift to the corridor that leads to the loading dock. I hear the brief stutter of laughter turn to a hush that means the ring has caught light. I step outside and call the county recorder after-hours line, which offers a simple instruction for e-recording documents through an approved portal. I have the portal bookmark. I have the template filled for a statement of withdrawal of consent as to the use of my mother's property for the financing arrangement in question, tied to her email authorization and subject to her signature. I am not forging anything. I am building the path for her to sign tonight before the cooling off period closes. I send the link to her tablet with a subject line she will recognize from my childhood. Urgent, please read now. I stand still and feel the edge of the night dig into my nerves. I don't want to break her heart in front of a room that still thinks this is a love story. I want to study her hand long enough for her to choose safety. The party swells again, and I step to the edge of the room where the projection washes over blank wall. My mother retreats toward the vendor table, at last. Her footsteps carry the pace of someone who needs a breath more than cake. She sees the pen I left. She sees the tab. She reads the form. I watch her read the words that pull a string through a labyrinth. Her shoulders settle with comprehension, not defeat. She takes the pen. She signs. She places the paper in her clutch. She turns back toward the center of the room with a spine that looks different. I feel something release in my chest that I didn't let myself name until now. He studies her face as she returns to him. He senses a new angle and tries to adjust his posture to match it. He gestures to the DJ. He raises his hands in a flourish to pull eyes toward the cake. The room responds. My mother steps one pace away from him and opens her clutch to slide the signed notice into the vendor packet, in plain view. It is a gesture a woman makes when she is done hiding. He moves faster now between toasts and small instructions. He speaks to the manager with smiles that tighten at the edges. He picks up a phone and texts with urgency disguised as charm. I stand near the doors and run through the list I built. The lender receives an email from my mother's account, the one I pre-drafted with her access still alive on the tablet, now attached with the signed notice. The bank fraud department receives a tip with supporting documents. The county recorder portal shows a queued submission with a timestamp that will later matter. I gather the folder and press it flat against my side. This is not vigilante work. This is paperwork. This is gravity applied in the opposite direction. My mother steps toward the stage they built for announcements and doesn't climb it. She moves past it. The action redraws the room's lines. He watches her with a calculation that looks like mathematics under pressure. He edges toward her as if proximity can change a signature. It cannot. The manager approaches their table with a small tablet reader and a smile that is friendly but firm. The open tab closes. The The caterer asks a question and receives a number that will be charged tonight, not promised tomorrow. He glances at my mother for rescue and receives steadiness instead. The evening thins around the edges as guests slip away. The projector light cuts, and the staff begins their quiet teardown. He pulls on his jacket with a motion that used to charm audiences, and now just looks like a man bracing against an outcome he cannot rehearse past. My mother collects her clutch, looks at the vendor packet as if it is a living thing she just taught to behave, and leaves by the side exit. I follow at a distance that respects her space while still keeping watch. He lingers near the stage, taps his phone, and receives a call that informs him of something I don't need to hear. He stiffens. He tucks the phone away and steps into the night in a direction that isn't home. The machinery he built has met resistance in the one place he didn't plan for, a woman's resolve born mid-event. The next morning requires nothing dramatic, only discipline. We filed the withdrawals through the portal. We submit a request to remove him as authorized representative on the DBA with the form she signed. We notify the registered agent that future service is to be directed solely to my mother's address until further notice. We send a cancellation request to the private lender under the rescission window anchored to the timestamp that belongs to last night. We request copies of all documents he had my mother sign and discover two that never reached her inbox. We demand them and receive PDFs with metadata that shows they were prepared on a device that isn't hers. We forward everything to a legal clinic that helps women untangle financial coercion. We do not dramatize. We do not plead. We present. The clinic replies with an intake appointment and a checklist I already began. I assemble a binder and label it with words that feel like a verdict. Exit strategy. We sit at my kitchen table without ceremony. I place the bracelet box on the table between us. It is closed. I do not open it. She does not open it. We don't make this about baubles because it isn't. I slide the jeweler's appraisal across to her. She traces the edge of the paper with a fingertip and then stops. She watches the edges of the room as if they might shift again, and then they don't. She inhales once, slowly, like someone who just walked back through a door into a house that didn't burn after all. I brew tea I don't drink and she doesn't touch. We exist for a minute in a quiet that is not resignation, but recalibration. I stack the signed forms into order and clip them. I name each step of the next 3 days, and she nods with the practical assent of a teacher who understands procedure. We make a list of personal items to retrieve from his place if any found their way there, and coordinate with a friend to accompany us. We arrange for a locksmith. We call the bank to reset security questions. We mark calendars with reminders that will keep this from reopening later. The tenderness between us doesn't arrive as apology. It arrives as parallel focus.
He texts and calls and fills the air with the persistence of a person who relies on inertia. We do not reply. He drops a letter at my mother's door in a tone that tries to mix indignation with concern. We document it and do not answer. He attempts to file a notice as an authorized representative one more time, and the system returns an error he doesn't anticipate because the form we filed already closed that door. He schedules a meeting with the private lender and arrives to find a rescission notice already in the file. He attempts to pull cash advance tricks on the business account and meets a fraud flag that freezes the attempt mid-swipe. Each move is a bead we thread onto a string of evidence we may never need to tie into a knot, but we are ready in case. He learns quickly that the momentum he counts on has been redirected. He pivots toward a new audience somewhere else because men like him can't sit still in silence. He exits my mother's orbit because there is no careful smile left to sustain his play. He leaves a trail of nearlies and almosts. We leave a trail of filings that hold.
We stand in the bungalow and let the house reset around us through small motions only we will remember. We gather the binder and slide it into the cabinet with insurance papers and warranties.
We remove the bracelet box from the table and store it in a place that will make sense in a year when it is just an object, not a symbol. We tape a new list inside the pantry door that replaces the old grocery staples with a different category: accounts, logins, who to call first, who to call second, who never to call. My mother opens her laptop and pulls up the storefront mock-up. She stares at the clean lines he designed and then closes it without a twitch of nostalgia. She opens a blank page instead and writes out a plan for a smaller, slower version that answers to no one's promises. I sit beside her and build the checklist that supports the plan. Neither of us uses the word betrayal because the word is too neat for the mess it tries to pin down. We use words that do work: cancel, replace, set, confirm. The house holds us without flinching.
I speak to the version of myself who wanted to sprint into that restaurant and demand that the room choose a side. I tell her the room doesn't matter. The room doesn't come home with us. The room doesn't sign documents or sit at a bank counter or file notices during narrow windows. The room makes noise and then forgets. What matters is the paper that moved and the signatures that anchored and the steps that lined up like tiles. I do not write an essay on forgiveness or punishment. I draft a short paragraph for myself that reads like a protocol. When a person tries to join love to leverage, separate the pieces and starve the leverage. When shame threatens to keep someone compliant, wrap the shame in action until it loosens. When the story tries to turn you into a character without agency, write the next action as a verb. I fold the paragraph and tuck it into the binder because I am my mother's daughter and I like instructions that hold in a storm.
A week later, the legal clinic calls with a question that used to frighten me. Do we want to pursue anything further? I assess the landscape we built and the cost of attention. I look at my mother, who is stirring honey into tea she finally wants. I answer with a plan that chooses peace without surrender. We file a quiet notice with the lender network about misrepresentation patterns. We sign permission for the clinic to share our documentation with regulators who keep lists. We do not pursue the man. We pursue the systems that catch the next woman sooner. I close the call and turn to my mother. She nods once and returns to the spreadsheet where she is mapping her first month of small, attainable goals. I consider it a miracle that looks ordinary. 2 women in a kitchen, adjusting columns. I pick up my phone and open the same app that started this. The photo is still there in the feed if I scroll back. I don't. I take a new photo instead. My mother's hands on a keyboard, her ring finger bare, her posture grounded, the binder closed beside her like a sleeping animal. I do not post it. I don't need witnesses. I keep it because it captures the moment after the cliffhanger, the quiet frame where the real story lives. I check the county portal one more time and see our filings listed with a small check mark I've come to love. I close it. I open a blank document and type a title for my own reminder: How to Keep the Room from Stealing the Narrative. I fill it with the steps I used. I tag it so I can find it when someone I love needs it. I save it and back it up. I shut the lid and breathe, as if I finally have time again.
We do a final pass through the house to see what else he touched. We find nothing, which is something. We arrange the dining chairs the way they were before. Optimism tried a new configuration. We place the folio on a high shelf behind tax returns where it will live as a relic rather than a resource. We cut an extra key and hand it to a neighbor who knows how to be discreet and available. We set a calendar reminder 3 months from now to revisit security on every account because vigilance has a schedule too. We sit on the porch steps and count the single tasks we can complete before noon. The number is modest. The number is enough. I set my phone face down because I want to feel the absence of notifications as a choice. My mother leans back and closes her eyes, not to escape, but to rest in a room no one else is arranging. She opens them with a clarity that looks like a new habit. I thought the story would end the moment I proved the betrayal, but it ends here, with a pen uncapped, a form submitted, and a woman I love choosing her future with both hands steady.